Welcome in to the Subconscious Mind Mastery Podcast. Thomas Miller with you. Glad to be here with Fred Dodson. Yes, we've got Fred back in the house. It's been over a year. Can you believe it? Well, we are going to catch up on that past year, which has been the pandemic past year, and get Fred's take on a number of things. We talk about COVID, but we also talk about one of the latest audiobooks that has been released called Essays of Reality Creation, Book 5. These are accumulation books of the articles that Fred publishes through a year and then puts them into books, and it's great because you get a smattering of a lot of different things from only the perspective that Fred Dodson has. There are several chapters in Book 5 that are blow-you-away chapters. And also, as you'll hear in the interview, chapters where he talks about COVID. So if you wanted Fred's take on COVID, it's in here. We wander through a number of topics, including my own take on astrology. Fred turns the questioning around. So this is a fun interview. Great to catch up. Here is the author of the audiobooks that I have been privileged to narrate for the last almost 8 years, Fred Dodson. It's been a year since we've talked to you, and in between our last visit and this, we have had this pandemic on our hands. You wrote in Essays Book 5, I think 3 or 4 articles on COVID-19, so I think we could just refer people to that for those perspectives. But here was the one thing I wanted to ask you. This thing is so charged both ways. And I thought, should we even ask Fred about COVID? And I thought, it's one of those things that if you say X, all the Y people don't like you. And if you say Y, all the X people don't like you.
Yeah, and why?
Exactly. That was my question. So here's this charge.
Why don't the Y like me? Well, the reason I wrote about it is because I figured I needed to have some commentary on current events. I always talk universally. There's nothing current. So I thought, okay, I might as well add my take on it. So my take was always skeptical of this whole thing. Yeah, I'm glad I actually took a stand on something, because I usually don't take a stand on anything, do I?
Well, sometimes I think doing the work that we do, you need to stay in the middle.
But this is too much. That's why I took a stand. It's a bit too much for me. It's taking it too far. You got this virus on the one hand, and you got a massive, way overblown reaction to it on the other hand. I'm not allowed to get in an airplane where I am. I'm not allowed to get in an airplane if I don't have a vaccine. That's like forced medication, forced. I mean, what kind of world do we live in? I don't have a problem with vaccines. I have a problem with governments going berserk, and in the country I live, I can't travel since 1 year, because if I come back, I'm going to have to spend half a month in quarantine. And the funny thing is, I tried to do that. I was like, okay, so I'll spend half a month in quarantine. That's 2 weeks of my life. And I tried to do that, and I couldn't do it because they said all hotels are booked out for a year. So I'm locked into the country. I'm locked into the country. I feel like I'm in North Korea,
Seriously.
So that's too much for me. That's why I started writing about it. That's way overdone. That's like a sudden dictatorship we find ourselves in. And I know it's similar in other countries. I mean, at least here I can go out to restaurants and go out to the beach. I know people in other countries, they're not even allowed to go outside. There's curfews. I have a lot of students in Germany. They're literally, they have curfews where they weren't allowed, or still in some places aren't allowed, to go outside. That shocks me. And from a reality creation perspective, treating people as if they are sick, makes them sick. So I'm opposed on those grounds too. I'm opposed to this whole thing on many grounds, but it includes the reality creation perspective. I'm not going to treat anybody like they're sick. In fact, if sick people come to me, and they sometimes do, I treat them like they're healthy, because that's going to influence them. I've seen it influence people. I've seen it make people healthy. I always see people as healthy. If I'm going to quarantine healthy people, I'm treating healthy people as sick. If I'm going to force vaccinate them, I'm treating healthy people as sick. So even from that viewpoint, it's just unacceptable to me. And it kind of reveals to me what kind of people we're being governed by. And that's great. Okay. I wasn't sure. I thought, well, maybe these people are cool. Maybe our government is cool, really good people, smart people. They know what they're doing. And this whole thing kind of revealed to me that maybe not. Maybe they're not cool.
What about the vaccine? You wrote about it in Essays 5, but where are you with it now? Because the reality is the guy who used to travel the world for 25 years is locked on the ground unless you take a shot.
Well, you have politicians saying it's not mandatory because we can't force medicate people on the one hand. And then on the other hand, you're not allowed to go into shops or travel if you're not vaccinated. So it is mandatory. They just find a way around the law. The law of most countries is not to force medicate people. So they find a way around it by saying, well, we're not going to force medicate you, but you're not allowed to do this or do that or do that. I believe that if I get vaccinated, from a reality creation standpoint, again, it's not going to harm me in any way. So I'm okay with vaccination. I'm okay with getting vaccinated. I'm not okay with the philosophy, with the lack of choice. I'm not okay with forcing people to do things. I believe in choosing, as you know. I'm a strong advocate of choosing. But I'm curious, actually, you're asking me these things. What's your viewpoint, if you dare say?
I've tried to stay in the middle on it.
Of course you do.
Look,
that's good.
Here's the thing. This vaccination was created within about a 10-month period. And really, it started rolling out in December. COVID didn't hit until March. So really, we're talking about 8 months. And it's a new technology, messenger RNA vaccinations. So they literally go into the RNA is a spinoff from your DNA, and it programs your RNA to recognize the virus. Now, I did an interview with a physician who used to be with the CDC, the Centers of Disease Control in the U.S., and he said that this vaccination was originally developed with the intention of attacking cancer cells. So they have a lot of high hopes ultimately for this messenger RNA technology. Okay, but it's not proven. And the very best medical science still can only speculate, and we are in a worldwide phase 3 trial. We don't know how this thing is going to impact people in 18 months and 3 years. So I'm not as keen on taking the messenger RNA, the Pfizer and the Moderna. I have the ingredients list. I haven't had time to sit down and look at each ingredient to see what you're putting in your body. But I agree completely with you that the issue for me much more is not so much do you get the shot or do you not get the shot. It's that you're not going to be able to live the life that you've been accustomed to living if you don't. Traveling, checking in motels, going to stores, getting on airplanes, standing in the passport line itself to get your passport cleared in the new country. You're not going to be able to do all of that because you are going to be like a leper in biblical times. Oh, you don't have a shot. You go over there.
Yeah. Yep. It's nice to hear that you actually read through the ingredients. That's a conscious approach to it, actually. I like that.
You go online, search it up. It's right there on an FDA website. You can get the list. It's on a PDF. Just things that you can't pronounce, so you have to look them up, see what they are. And I think that's, again, it's look, it's what we have. It's not like there's going to be option D around the corner. This is it. So we have to make these decisions. And yes, the thing that concerns me, since we talked last, I am a grandpa. And it concerns me what kind of world my little grandbaby daughter Lucy is going to grow up in.
Congratulations, Granddad.
Thank you. What a joy. And she is an incredible little girl, as all granddaughters are. But what kind of world is she going to grow up in? Is it going to be a more authoritarian place in the next 20 years? It's looking like the answer is yes.
It already is.
Yeah. Or maybe the answer is duh.
Well, it is. And it came so suddenly, so unexpectedly. It is. It's become completely authoritarian across large parts of the world. Yes, it has already while we were sleeping. So by speaking in the way we're speaking right now, and many other people talk this way too, we're able to reverse some of it, or lessen some of it. So I believe in I believe in standing up to it. I do. I talk about it in daily life, and I say, well, I don't agree with that, and I say so openly. And I think that's important. I think if too many people stay quiet, it's going to happen.
As you said, as we were sleeping.
Yep.
So this has been brewing. Authoritarianism doesn't just appear. Hitler's Germany didn't just appear overnight. Marxism didn't just snap into existence over the course of 90 days. Have you thought to go back and look at where this authoritarian mindset might have originated?
I think it's always been around. It always rears its ugly head, and then we stomp it back down, and then it comes, and then we assume it's done. And I think we get complacent. I think it comes. You asked me where it comes from. It comes from our complacency, and it's a wake-up call we give to ourselves, subconsciously. If you metaphysically speaking, not politically speaking, but metaphysically speaking. It's a wake-up call we give to ourselves. We get complacent and comfortable, and we fall asleep, and we're like, whatever, you guys decide. Yeah, we trust you. You guys decide. And that's why I teach reality creation, which is I decide. I need to decide. I need to take responsibility. I need to be responsible for my reality in my life. And the opposite of that is I don't need to decide anything. Somebody else is going to take care of it. And that's exactly where it gets us. Somebody else is taking care of it, but not in the way most of us want.
That's for sure.
I also, again, I'd be curious about your answer to this, to the same question. I know that's going to make the podcast longer, but I'm curious.
One of the things that we've talked about this, and I know your position on it, I got interested in astrology when I started changing my whole structure of life about 13 years ago now. But really over the last 3 years have I taken an interest in this. And, even you quoted the Bible a lot in the levels of heaven and hell. And Psalm 19:1, a verse in the Old Testament, says, the heavens declare the glory of God. And if you look at it from that perspective, I think we have been given clues. And one of the clues is that we are moving into this Aquarian age. Now, we could sit and talk a little bit about Aquarian, but I think you might know quite a bit about Aquarianism.
Being an Aquarius.
Being an Aquarius. So if you think about what Aquarius means, it is freedom. It is don't tell me what to do is kind of the cookie cutter keyword for Aquarianism. For an Aquarian is like, don't tell me what to do. An Aquarian beats to their own drum.
Yep.
Well, we could talk about a lot of other things. It's technological, too. And now we've got this new vaccine that is this breaking cutting-edge technology, Aquarian. Well, they flip the coin over. Every coin has two sides. And the other side is, the shadow side is authoritarianism, squashing the independents. And I think that's the battle that's going to be playing out over these next years. So that's my take. That's
an interesting take.
I think we're going to see both sides.
The shadow side of Aquarianism. That's an interesting take. Yep. That's the battle we're in all of a sudden.
All of a sudden. And it did. It slipped up on us. There was no announcement. And all of a sudden we're there. And actually what triggered all of this, and again, going back to the signs in the sky, if we took the biblical story, the 3 wise men, which were actually Persian astrologers, magi, came to the manger area and said, we've seen the star. We followed the sign in the sky. And in January of last year, 2 planets converged. They were right on top of each other in the sky, Saturn and Pluto. And if you trace Saturn and Pluto back in the sign of Capricorn where it happened this time, if we go all the way back to the 1200s, it happened in 1284, that was a portal between the Dark Ages and the Italian Renaissance.
Oh, so interesting.
The next time Saturn and Pluto came together in Capricorn was 1518, and this little rebel German monk by the name of Martin Luther stuck an email on the door of the church that said, "Dear Mr. Pope, we're not doing it this way anymore. And here are the points that we're challenging you." Authoritarianism challenged. And that was the shift from the Roman Renaissance to the European Renaissance. And then you fast forward to the next time that Pluto was there, Saturn was over on the other side of the chart, was 1770, 1776. That's when a bunch of British rebels dumped a bunch of tea in Boston Harbor and said, we're not paying your stupid taxes anymore. And from that was born America. So it's very significant as we trace it back. Only 3 times in the last 1,000 years that this has appeared. And so you have to ask, what is the shift? And I think the battle that's going to forge what's ahead is this tension, this battle between authoritarianism and free will, free choice. China already has a document that you can look up on the internet. It's China's World Domination 2050. So China has put a line in the sand and a post online that says we want to dominate the world by 2050. And that would be much more restriction than we see today if they are successful.
Yeah, we've already seen that China wanted to become the next superpower. And this whole thing has a kind of Chinese vibe to it, this whole COVID thing, because it was the Chinese that always walked around in masks, you know.
Right, yes.
The virus itself is from China. So it's fitting. It's fitting that that's how they enter the stage of being the superpower in the world. Empires come and go, I'm afraid, you know. And
they do.
Empires decline, and now a new empire, which is China, is arising, and the whole world is already now influenced by it. So it's as if we entered 2020, and that was the emergence of China. I'm sure you have an astrological explanation for all this, which is very interesting, by the way. I never saw you as an astrologer. I now realize you are.
It's been fascinating. I've spent a lot of time studying it. But yes, I think, in fact, as you were just saying that and we were threading this together, I was like, oh my gosh, Wikipedia 2150, looking back at this period, maybe this is that point where they talk about the pandemic and they talk about the wars and they talk about the famines and they talk about the economic changes to a new digital currency, which China is already implementing. Did you know that most of the whole process of Bitcoin, in other words, creating it, holding the ones that already exist, and this mining of it, so in other words, if you buy or sell it, it has to go through a computer, all of that is Chinese technology controlled in China.
I did not know that, Thomas.
Bitcoin was created in the United States, and it has literally been handed to China.
I did not know that, but it does not surprise me. Did you know that Zoom is Chinese?
Don't tell me that. We're on it.
Yep. We're being listened to right now.
Lock your doors tonight, Fred. Holy cow. Well, it's serious. As you were saying that, what clicked with me is that just like in the 1200s, 1300s, things shifted basically to Rome and to Italy 250 years later. There's a 250-year cycle, too. That's an interesting study. It takes us 250 years to screw something up, because historians say that the Italian Renaissance still to this day was the best time to be on the planet. That was an amazing period. Hub of it, the New York City of the Italian Renaissance was Florence. And look at everything that came from that. And maybe what this is a shift from the Euro-American domination to Chinese. Wow.
Yep. Afraid so.
Let's
Amazing,
talk about the audiobooks while we still can.
Okay.
Let's see. There was a missing chapter in Essays version 5 that needs to be in there. I think it needs to be written and recorded. Wow, we just did. So
yeah, we sure did.
So these essays books are really cool. So you take all of your articles accumulated over about a year and you put them in a book. Now, it's kind of to me like it's like Fred Dodson Twitter, right? It's Fred Dodson short, because the essays are generally pretty quick. So you get your material, you get reality creation across a broad spectrum of topics. Some you might be interested in, some you might not, but it's a smorgasbord. Usually about 40-something chapters, 40 different articles. I get a lot of really positive feedback. People like it. What kind of feedback do you get from the essays books?
I don't really get much feedback on the essays books. I get feedback on the proper books.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've had people say, oh, I like those essays books. They like the concept.
I do get a lot of reads of the articles. I know they're liked. So that's why I keep writing them, you know. I enjoy them a lot, and I know people enjoy them, but I don't get as much feedback on them as I get on the books.
When you sit down to write an article, which you do throughout the year, you release a lot of them over the course of weeks and months. And by the way, if people are not subscribed, you can just opt in, and this is the only thing you'll get is when Fred puts out material. It's realitycreation.org. But when you sit down to write an article, what triggers your inspiration? What inspires you to write about X topic?
Something my wife said over the weekend.
There you go.
Interestingly, my best ideas come over the weekend when I'm not working, when I'm relaxing, when I've let go of writing, let go of anything. That's when the best ideas come up. That's why it's folly. It's a mistake to always work like many people do. Work. The best ideas come for working when you're not working. And I got to say that my wife has a lot more input than people realize on that website. She'll say something brilliant, and I'll say, hold on a second, let me write this down. And she sometimes complains. She says, are all my conversations just for the purpose of you exploit everything I say for your website? Can you just sit down and talk to me for a change without taking notes? You know, so it's really funny. Also, things friends might talk about, things I read somewhere might trigger it. But my intention is to try to write something I've not written before. There's a lot of repeat topics. Sometimes I improve on something. I expand on something I've written before. But I also try to find stuff that's not written anywhere or very rare, because that's fun to me. Finding the rare stuff is fun, you know. And people and readers enjoy that too. They want to read something they haven't already read elsewhere.
Different takes on things. Boy, is the platform for that, probably the demand for that, greatly accentuated now.
It is, because all the media sounds the same pretty much, it's so boring, really. And so it's easy. My job is easy. All I have to do is sound a little bit different than everybody else. And people go out, they parrot stuff, and my goal is to just provide a different take, because there's a lot of smart people out there. I know there's a lot of smart people out there who are bored, just like me. So I'm talking to people who are bored by mainstream takes, who are bored by boring takes. I like fun. I like learning, new stuff. And that's what I try to put into it. And sometimes I achieve that. I think I have in each essays book, about 5 articles. There's about 40, but I have about 5 articles of which I think they're really, really good.
Well, let's talk about one of the really, really good ones that I thought was really, really good is Chapter 32. It's a story about when you decided that you were not going to just accept the reality of a rainy, gloomy, wintry forecast when you and some friends were trying to play tennis, and you used reality creation to change the weather.
That is one of the 5 articles I thought was really good. I'm glad we're on the same page.
Why don't we play it for everybody right now? Let's let them listen to some of the story of Fred's reality creation changing the weather. Can conscious intention change the weather? For the last 4 years, I have gone to play tennis every Monday and Friday morning. There are no indoor courts, so whenever it rains, tennis gets canceled. Especially in winter, there is a lot of rain, and tennis is sometimes rained out several weeks in a row. I used to take this for granted, as if there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. Even though I have been teaching reality creation for 30 years, it didn't occur to me that I might create another reality. Can you imagine that? I've been teaching it for decades and forgot to apply it. It was so beyond imagination for me, I didn't even consider it. Instead, attention was fixated on a weather app. The weather app would determine my Monday and Friday. I wouldn't determine my own reality. An app would. A meteorologist would. I mean, let's say realistic, right? I wouldn't be so megalomaniac to think that I could influence the weather. That's insane. Who do I think I am? Last fall and autumn, tennis cancellations started up again, and it frustrated me. I spend a lot of time on my laptop in coaching, and going outdoors for tennis was my favorite way to balance excessive screen time. I came across an article about indigenous people doing rain ceremony to influence the weather. That's when it occurred to me. All people across the world have done prayers and rituals to change the weather. It's a normal part of human history. They have always danced, prayed, and sang for rain or sun to help their farming. Why haven't I tried this? Don't I teach reality creation? But my mind responded. Isn't it selfish to use it on something as mundane as tennis? Am I using up hard-earned karma points? Shouldn't I use my manifesting power to heal the sick? Do I have a limited number of allotted manifestations I can use per year? You see, even the reality creation coach can have a mind full of nonsense doubts. The universe, source, the angels, God, spirit, higher self, or whatever you wish to call the creative and responsive field, wants human beings to rely on their spiritual power and are more than eager to manifest. I remember the first time I used this. It was a Monday morning and my app was predicting rain. The organizer wanted to call it off, but I texted that it will clear up. With confidence and in defiance of the stupid weather app, everyone showed up. After only 30 minutes of play, dark clouds appeared. Wind started blowing. One said, "Yeah, they predicted this. This looks bad. Time to pack it up." And then it started showering down hard. With full might of intention, I said, "No, I would like it to clear up. I would like it to be perfectly clear. The sun is shining. By the power of the highest source of all universes, I intend for a clear sky. The sun is now shining. Thank you. Or something like that. It was with strongest, most sincere intent, done like there was no other option. What then happened I have never seen before. The group of tennis players, which were 11 people except me, were already leaving the courts because it had started to pour. While they were leaving, and before they had reached the clubhouse to dry off, the rain abruptly stopped, and the sun emerged brightly through the clouds. Under my breath, I whispered, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." The group was confused. They saw me. I hadn't left the court. They had all left. I had stayed. Reality creation is to also physically embody one's intention. Had I returned to the clubhouse, it would have given the message that I don't believe. The group seemed confused. They all returned to the courts and started playing again. You know, as we've been talking about the COVID situation, I'm wondering with the technology that you, or the technique that you just used to change the weather, could we change this COVID situation the same way? What's different about it?
Well, I'll tell you something. I've been amazed at how bad my weather app is. I've tried so many weather apps, and they're horrible. And I've discovered that, at least in the area I'm living, the predictions are mostly inaccurate. You know, it'll say chances of rain 0%, and it'll rain. It'll say chances of rain 80%, it won't rain. And I found that my intention so far, I haven't used it that much, but so far, you know, we always have this feeling, don't use these powers too much. It's weird. Where's that feeling come from? But I haven't used it much, but so far, every time I've intended for better weather, I've had better weather. And I've always intended it for the purpose of tennis. That's the funny part. I've never intended it when me and my wife want to go on vacation or something just for tennis. Can we use it for COVID? Absolutely. That's why I keep writing about taking a stand, standing your ground, staying firm in your knowledge and awareness that this is not right. That you can't treat healthy people as if they were sick. It's not right to deprive people of choice. Okay, we want to be healthy. Everybody wants to choose to be healthy. And if vaccines make us healthy, we will choose vaccines. And if you're going to force us, it makes it look suspicious, as if there's something else going on. It turns people paranoid. Okay, we will force you to take this really healthy thing. Well, if it's really healthy, you don't have to force me. And if you stay in that awareness, of course, this thing would end more quickly. It's just that not all that many people are on that page. Seen on a worldwide scale. I mean, I was at the mall yesterday, and there was a long line of people in front of the entrance. I thought, what's going on there? And as I came closer, I saw that the line was because people were scanning their contact tracing app. And I thought, oh gosh, I don't even have a contact tracing app. What's wrong with me? You know, why am I feel like an odd man out. Okay. It never occurred to me to have a contact tracing app. And I still don't have one. I just went in, you know, and I not foresaw, but forefelt a situation where it's actually going to be mandatory for me to sign in and sign out everywhere I go. And I realized these were the last days where I could just slip into the shop without doing that. And that's to maintain an awareness that's not what we want. We want something else. Okay. We want freedom. If enough people maintain that, there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. The governments can do about it. Okay. But it has to be a critical mass. And if it is a critical mass, you'll see things opening up again. You know, like happened in Italy, where all these restaurants, they just they kept serving people, you know, and they said, we can't go broke. We need to finance our families and communities. You know, we can't just close all our restaurants. You've already deprived us of all these tourists. Now you want to deprive us of doing any sort of business, owning any sort of restaurant. What's next? You deprive us of owning property. So they just kept their restaurants open, and there was absolutely nothing the government could do about it because it was critical mass. It was too many people. And so that just disappeared, and the politicians pretended that was never their intention, and all is well. The rats just go back into hiding, The politicians just go back into hiding. So, of course, it's possible, and it's possible through consciousness and through maintaining calm and sovereignty. As I walk through there, people look at me, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, there's somebody who's not doing this. What's their problem? But it makes them think, they might think critically of me, but at least it makes them think. They see an example that something else is possible, and there's somebody else not participating in this. And then they might think, but he should participate in that. But that's okay. It gets them thinking, Whereas if everyone were in line, then there's no example of anything else. So a person needs to set an example of something else. I've set an example of perfect health. I've been healthy for the last 30 years or even more. I don't even remember, I don't even remember the last time I was seriously sick. And I know the same will continue, and there's not going to be a COVID issue. I might have already gotten it and didn't even know, I might have actually gotten it and didn't even know. And that's the example I'm going to continue setting, the example that I'm not getting sick, and I'm not afraid of getting sick. Even if I do get sick, I'm not afraid of it. Even if I do die, I'm not afraid of that either. That's the example I want to set. A fearless example, a loving example, a strong example, because I wish for people to be stronger and healthier and happier. That's my job. I'm a reality creation coach. So I don't want to go around thinking, oh my God, things are getting really bad, and soon we're going to be all be sick. And I don't want to think that way. And I don't even want to think what we discussed earlier, that there's going to be a global government run from China, oppressive authoritarian government. I don't want to think that way either, because even though that's a possibility, I'll entertain the possibility, but I'm not going to support that either, even though it's right in my face. Okay, I'm going to continue living like 2019.
Absolutely. There you go. I put one of your articles when you published it up on our Facebook page, and some people reacted to it. And some people dropped off of the page. They unsubscribed from our group, our podcast page.
Yeah.
If somebody has that much emotion attached to COVID-19 and everything else that's going on, how would you advise? Because obviously, from any perspective, having that much angst, it would be the same thing as if you brought up a political discussion. You could mention the word Trump, and you could mention the word Biden, and already the entire audience has reacted, right? Yeah. Everybody listening has just reacted. So when you have that much reaction around current events, how do you advise people reframe that?
Well, I have students who disagree with me on that. Fortunately, they disagree with me, and they can still be students. Those are calm people, intelligent people.
But there's so much charge out there right now.
But yeah. So how would I deal with that charge?
Yeah. That charge to me is unhealthy.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't write too much on this stuff, because I don't want to pour oil and what do you call it? Pour
hot oil over somebody's head, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do I deal with that? I don't know.
Well, if somebody's all charged up, even if somebody comes to you with coaching and they're all charged up about their spouse or their partner, it's just the same thing. It's just this.
I give them. I've been attacked for my views on COVID, of course, and I've also been unsubscribed from, and I've even lost a very good money deal. They were like, well, we can't you can't be publishing this. We can't work with you anymore. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I try to just send them blessings and love, That's okay. That's all right. I have this in coaching all the time. People who are anxious or angry, it's normal to me. It's normal to me to have that. So I just give them space for that. The important part, Thomas, as you know, as most people know, is not becoming that way too. So it's about my reaction. It's not about other people's angst. It's about my reaction to it. Can I give that space? Can I say, okay, I understand your viewpoint. I understand where you're coming from. Pandemic is something serious. So we really want to make sure we're looking into it, and looking into its effects. I'm glad there's so many people working on it. And I essentially give people that space, and they do disagree, and I give them the space to disagree. And that's good. That's something that authoritarians wouldn't do. But since I'm not an authoritarian, I'm going to give people the space to have that opinion, and to unsubscribe, because we're not authoritarians. So if you're being the freedom, I think the best answer to all of that is being the freedom and maintaining it, and also, if you stay calm and give them the space, it'll actually make them think and question their viewpoint. By the way, it's all about how these things are communicated. If I communicate my skepticism of COVID in an angry tone as a conspiracy theorist, it's not going to have a positive effect. I need to communicate it as a calm person, a sane and rational person, not as an angry person or a fearful or a paranoid person. So it's the same as I've always been teaching, whether you're in coaching or whether you're talking about COVID, can you do so in a sane manner that appreciates all viewpoints and understands where the viewpoints are coming from? There's a reason people have viewpoints. You know how it works.
Excellent. And without further ado, all of the books are available on Audible and iTunes. Thank you so much for listening. Fred, thank you. And we will be back with his take on heaven and hell. That's going to be on the next podcast. In the meantime, enjoy the journey. I'm Thomas Miller. Thanks for listening. The opinions on this podcast are those of the host, based on personal experience only, and are not intended as medical or psychological advice. If you are experiencing symptoms that require professional treatment, please contact a licensed medical practitioner.